The National Guard has been deployed in Minnesota after rioting and looting erupted over the shooting of another black man in the Minneapolis area. Now, the mother of this man claims that he was pulled over for having air freshener, which is apparently illegal, and then it turned out he had a warrant. When he tried to drive away, the police shot and killed him. There's a lot we don't know about what's going on with that particular case, but it's easy to say the rioting and the looting is completely unjustified. Of course, you're seeing many conservatives and moderate personalities point out the looting is bad and the rioting is wrong. Yet, of course, from the mainstream media, they're called protests. Some protests. You know, when I pull up NBC and CBS and all these other outlets, they don't show the destroyed windows. They don't show the people twerking in the parking lot as they loot and raid a GameStop and a Walgreens. I don't know what that has to do with justice for anybody, but my friends, if you thought you were going to make it through this summer without some insane riots, I don't know what rock you've been living under, but I'd imagine people who watch this channel at least could kind of expect this to happen. The Chauvin trial is set to begin very soon. By the time you're watching this, actually, I think they probably will have already started. Chauvin, as most of you know, is being charged with the murder of George Floyd. It's looking really good for the defense. If you haven't been following the Chauvin case, again, in the Minneapolis area, I think this one's in Minneapolis, the prosecution has actually been dropping the ball for almost every single day of the trial so far. And I think we're on like day 9. I think today's like day 10. There's been some legitimate analysis where they point out the prosecution keeps having their witnesses backfire on them. However, this past week, Thursday and Friday, seemed to be decently good for the prosecution. And some analysts have said that this is what the prosecution should have been doing the whole time. But every time the state brings up a witness, you'll get someone saying, oh, actually, Chauvin was trained to do that. Oh, actually, I've done something similar, which, look, you get rid of intent and then you add that Chauvin's trained to do this and you're going to get reasonable doubt. The reason I bring this up in this context, I'm going to read to you about what's going on with the latest riots, show you some photos and explain to you what's going on because we got a hat trick today. That is three different stories. We've got this story out of Minneapolis. We have another clash between people like a White Lives Matter thing, which is ridiculous. And then we have this Virginia police officer getting fired. It is starting to heat up, both figuratively and literally. Now, I don't know. Again, I want to be clear. I'm seeing a lot of people point out that this man who was shot and killed was doing something wrong or he was a bad person. And I'm like, chill. All right. He did have a warrant. He did apparently try to flee. That doesn't justify necessarily a cop shooting him. If the cop was in front of the car and the guy tries to flee a traffic stop and maybe hits the cop shoots him, justified. And again, there's a lot of nuance to this. But if this dude is just driving away and they like shoot through the side of the car, not justified. But apparently he crashed into other people. So I just don't know. I can't tell you this. These people who go out and burn down buildings and loot, GameStop and other stores, they don't care about justice. There's video of these people just twerking in a parking lot while they're looting and raiding these stores. They just take advantage of the fact the police are now occupied and can't do anything to stop them. Well, here's the first story from the Daily Mail. They say police fired tear gas and rubber bullets as looting and violent protests raged in Minneapolis suburb overnight after officers shot at a 20-year-old black man during a traffic stop less than 10 miles from where George Floyd was killed. The National Guard was called in to calm the chaos, and a curfew was imposed to quell angry demonstrators. How is a curfew going to quell anybody? Over the shooting death of Dwayne Wright on Sunday in the Brooklyn Center neighborhood. The unrest came just hours before the trial of Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer charged with murdering George Floyd. Police have released few details about the fatal shooting. They said officers tried to arrest Wright after pulling him over and his girlfriend for a traffic violation at about 2 p.m. on Sunday before realizing he had an outstanding warrant. Officers say as they tried to arrest him, Wright got back in his car and drove off. An officer fired at the vehicle, striking Wright, but he continued driving for several blocks before hitting another car. I got to stop right there. This sounds bad. I don't have all the evidence, and I try to keep things, look, the George Floyd thing really was a punch in the gut for me and a lot of people because we all felt that pain watching that video initially. Now we're learning a lot of things about what really went down, and it's a different story. Still upset that, Floyd died, and I'm sad that this is the state of affairs in this country, but it's not as cut and dry as we thought it was. In this instance, the information we're getting so far, and I'm talking outside the activists, ain't good for the police. Let me show you this again. Officers said as they tried to arrest him, he got back in his car and drove off. An officer fired at the vehicle, striking Wright. Why did cops shoot a vehicle that was leaving? Now, the cops will probably say he's a dangerous, wanted criminal evading arrest, and he could hurt someone with his car. I think that's absurd. I think that's absurd. Now, they shot him, and then he started crashing. Was he crashing in response to being shot and then he died? They say police have not said if he was armed. Wright's mother says he called her in the moments before to say police had pulled him over for having air fresheners dangling from his rear view mirror. It is illegal in Minnesota to have anything hanging from a rear view mirror. I'm not convinced of this either. Activists, of course, are latching onto this. Many people have already published stories saying this is a common pretext for harassing minorities and things like that. It may be, absolutely, because I've been pulled over on fake nonsense before. I've experienced this. However, it might be that they ran his plates, they saw that he had an active warrant, and they needed a pretext for pulling him over. So, more of an agreement with the activists on this one. They ran his plates and they were like, hey, that guy's got a warrant. Pull him over. For what? He's got air freshener. So when they pull him over, they say something like, oh, you can't have air freshener. Give me your ID. Get out of the car. You're under arrest. Apparently, in the call, I think the mother said something like she could hear the cop yell, don't run, Dwayne. And then he gets back in his car and then, tragedy. But look, I'm going to tell you this. We need to get the body cam released. And this is why body cameras exist, for justice. If these cops truly did nothing wrong, this is what was good for many of the officers in the Chauvin case. When we didn't have the body camera footage, they weren't releasing it. We didn't know the full context. Now we know there's a bunch of, there's much more complexity to the situation. Again, still upset over the whole situation, but it changed the whole narrative. They say he was pronounced dead at the scene of the crash, and his girlfriend, who was a passenger of the car, sustained non-life-threatening injuries. So we can see these videos of police and this clashing. Here's a cop. He's yelling. A lot of rioting and, people on their knees. They're going to say police say both officers' body cameras were on and recording during the incident. Wright's mother, Katie Wright, said he called her while he was being pulled over to get the insurance information for the vehicle because she recently gave the car to him. She said he told her he had been pulled over because he had air fresheners hanging from his rear view mirror. Police have only said they pulled Wright over for a traffic violation, but have not yet given details. Describing the call, Wright's mother said, I said when the police officer comes back to the window, put him on the phone and I will give him the insurance information. Then I heard the police officer come to the window and say, put the phone down and get out of the car. And Wright said, why? He said, we'll explain to you when you get out of the car. A minute later, I called and his girlfriend answered, who was the passenger in the car, and said that he'd been shot. And she put it on the driver's side, and he was laying there lifeless. I heard scuffling, and I heard a police officer say, Dante, don't run, she said through tears. The call ended, and she dialed his number again. His girlfriend answered and said he was dead in the driver's seat. As news of Wright's death traveled, about 100 people, some visibly upset, and one carrying a sign demanding justice for George Floyd, confronted police in riot gear. Protests started peacefully, according to eyewitness reports, but soon turned unruly, with demonstrators vandalizing two police vehicles, pelting them with stones and jumping on them. And I'm going to tell you, I'm mad about all this. I am livid about all this. Let me ask you a question. The cops can pull a dude over for air freshener, maybe because he had an outstanding warrant. They can shoot and kill him because he's fleeing. But when the people come out and smash up small businesses, where are the cops? It is so easy for these cops to handle these small situations, but the last thing they'll be doing is protecting your business. This dude didn't need to die. I don't know the full picture. If he committed a crime, I don't like that. From the sound of things so far, it's probably bad, but I got to be honest, once his body camera footage is out, then our opinion is probably going to change for the better or for worse. I just don't trust the activists on this one. But it's frustrating to me to hear a story of police willing to do everything in their power, even use lethal force to apprehend this guy for his warrant. But then we see it over and over again with the riders smashing, destroying everything. And what do the cops do? Nothing. They stand in the street. There's video of these cops standing in the street as people are jumping up and down, smashing police vehicles. And what am I supposed to think about this? Am I supposed to say, good for the police officers standing there doing nothing while they've repeatedly burned down cities? What did they do in Portland? Nothing. Okay. In Portland, the cops arrested a lot of these people, but they kept coming back out. The DAs did nothing. So that's a bit of a different circumstance. I'll concede that point. In Minneapolis, these people went around basically burning down various buildings in the city that were totally destroyed. And the police, it's so easy. And I mean, this literally it is. To pull a guy over and be like, you're under arrest. And then when he's like, I'm leaving, you're like, The cops like, okay, I will use all of the power at my discretion. And these protests happen and they do nothing. Now look, I shouldn't say do nothing, but they stand back and they watch. But I'll tell you this. I got to be honest. I ain't even mad. You know why? I don't live here. I don't live in Minneapolis. Bro, y'all had a chance to vote for change here. And these people voted for this. They voted for the people say defund the police. They voted to abolish their police department. Now they're doing this massive, multi-million-dollar recruitment drive. The other day I heard from some locals, Black Panthers were out and they were armed to the teeth. And I'm like, good. Seriously. The Black Panthers have every right to be armed, to go outside. You got a Second Amendment right. I don't want violence to erupt. So, I think people should be careful. But I'll tell you this. There have been many instances where armed people have come out to these riots and these protests and they don't use their guns. And there have been some where they have, or at least there's been, one prominent one. So I hope people don't engage in, look, you might have the gun, you have the right to carry it. Be smart about it, be responsible. And I'm wondering if when you have large groups of people who are armed, that actually chills things out. I don't know for sure, though. What I can say is I'm not thrilled with the police department at all. I'm not in support of what they do. You pull somebody over. It's so easy to deal with one person. It's so easy for the cops to deal with one person. And again, literally, it's true. It is. Pulling over one person is easy. But then dealing with a riot, they do nothing. They stand back. Now, why is that? Look, I got some videos. I don't know what I can or can't show because, YouTube might take the stuff down. But check this out. From Andy No. A group of women sing and dance outside of stores that were looted by BLM rioters in Brooklyn Center. Dwayne Wright, Minneapolis, Foot Locker, T-Mobile, liquor stores. And these people are just dancing in the street. I don't think these people are actual looters because cops are there on the scene. But you know what, man? I don't know. It's not so easy to figure out how you solve for these problems. You know what I mean? Like the police obviously want to respond. I don't think the police want this stuff to happen. And there are a lot of people who didn't vote for this and voted for Trump or the Republicans or for some kind of, increase in enforcement. But now you look at what's going on in Minneapolis and you look at how bad it's gotten. You've got rampant looting all this weekend. You've got another dude dead. You've got the Chauvin trial still happening. The defunding of the police. You got just chaos, man. It's just chaos. I don't know what to say. I really don't. It's like a record on it's on a loop. You know what I mean? Am I supposed to feign outrage over what's happening in these cities when people keep voting for this stuff? No, I can't. Look, I complain the first time these rioters come out and I see this stuff in Portland, in New York, in LA, in Chicago, in Baltimore. I complain because I'm like, hey, people don't like this, right? Well, it turns out I was wrong. I'm willing to concede this. I'm always willing to concede when I'm wrong. I thought that these people were unhappy with the riots. And then it turns out they're actually thrilled with the riots. I mean, Portland reelects Ted Wheeler. These states like Minnesota, Minnesota went blue, didn't it? They're just like, I'm cool with status quo. I'm glad all of this is happening. Joe Biden ain't going to do anything. If you thought Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were going to do more than Trump was doing and Trump was barely doing anything, man, I feel bad for you. But I honestly can't care anymore because these people had a choice. And these cities vote for this stuff. You know what? Here's a big problem. You see these women singing and dancing in the parking lot of T-Mobile and Foot Locker? These people vote too. And I'm willing to bet they vote for the destruction. So what do you do? I don't know. But like I said, these people like it. Now, there are a lot of people in the Minneapolis area in Minnesota. I've talked to a lot of people. I know a lot of people up there. I'm like, when are you going to leave? And they're like, I can't just up and leave, bro. There are some people who got on a boat, traveled across the ocean, 3,000 miles, risking life and limb and risking death. And, they did it. I didn't say it was going to be easy. It's going to be extremely hard. But when you live in these places, I'll tell you this. Here's what I think. When I see the people stay in these areas that are getting looted and there's rioters and the media defends them over and over again. Look at this. Crowd protests after police near Minneapolis shoot black motorists. This article from NBC News, they don't talk about the riots or the destruction or the looting. When people choose to live there, I know what this says. And you should realize this too. Now, there are people that are upset the looting's happening. I understand that. But those that would come to me and comment and tell me, I hate that it's happening. There's nothing I can do. I can't move. No, that's not what you're saying, bro. If you were in a building and the building caught on fire, you would get up and you would run out of that building. If your home was on fire, you would grab your kids and you would flee that building. And then you would be standing outside with no home. Where do you go? And what do you do? All your stuff is gone because there's an immediate threat. You feel that risk. You know the fire is an immediate danger. When the rioting and the looting happens and you say, well, I can't leave. You see my point? You can leave. You can literally get out and walk into the woods. You don't want to do that. What you're really saying, and I get this, is that your life is actually safer and more comfortable living alongside the rioters and looters than it would be for you to spend money to sell off your possessions and take a large risk leaving where you live. I'm not saying it to be disrespectful. That's just the truth. If I heard a creaking in my house and the roof started to cave in, you'd have no choice but to leave. It's not about whether you like that it's happening or don't like that it's happening. You're like, if I don't move, bad things will happen to me and my family. In Minneapolis, the people who say, I'm going to stay here are saying, if I stay here, I think me and my family will be safe. The riots just aren't that big of a deal to most people. So that's why I'm not going to pretend to be angry about it. I'm going to look at these videos. I'm going to be critical of the cops when I have to be critical when they do things wrong. I'm going to be critical of the rioters and the looters because that's wrong. But the regular people who live there, I'll be critical of them too, because this stuff gets worse and worse day after day, month after month, year after year. It's just easier for me to stay where I am. It's safer for me to stay where I am. If it was true that the riots really were that dangerous and that bad for your community, you'd get out. But the truth is, people, they choose the path of least resistance. And the safer option for them is staying in the city of riots. But I'm not trying to be a dick. I mean it literally. Like, if you were to just get out and go walk in the woods, you'd be in serious trouble. Maybe it's better to be in your house and just protect yourself. If you were to spend all your money and move, you wouldn't have money for bills or, medical payments or savings. I get it. It is safer to just be among the rioters and let them do their thing. Because I'll tell you this, the police aren't going to stop it. It's getting worse. You think that after all this and the Chauvin trial going on, they're going to stop rioting? It is going to, that city is going to burn to the ground. So I'll tell you one thing. There's an interesting point of you have a building and someone tells you, hey, there's like a bunch of people trying to burn your house down. And you're like, well, it's better that I stay here. Yeah, but like sooner or later, it's going to happen. Well, I'm safer in the house. Bro, but you should do something, right? I guess it's short-term versus long-term thinking. I think in the long term, I take a look at what's going on and I'm like, where will I be in a year? Because if I have to keep spending money on security and the cost of living keeps going down and the property values are tanking and the riots keep lighting up, is it going to be worth living here in a year? It may feel good now, but maybe you make the hard jump and then a year from now, you'll be in a much better position. Let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, with the riots going on, your comfort and happiness and safety is at a 6. A year from now, you'll drop to a 4, maybe a 3, because the riots will get worse. You can leave your place now, and it'll immediately drop you to a 4 or 5, but a year from now, you'll be at a 7. You see my point? It's about quantifying that long-term investment. I'll tell you one thing. You turn on the mainstream media and it's obvious. Oh, we know the National Guard was mobilized. We know that rocks and things are being thrown at people. 200 people are marching towards the police firing tear gas. The front door of the Brooklyn Park Police Department, was struck by gunfire, shattering glass, police said in a statement. They're straight up shooting at cops. You want to stay there. Okay. Then don't expect me to come out and be shocked by this. It's not just about voting for a politician. When you go to when you live in a place like this and you keep putting money into the tax dollars that clearly aren't going to the police, they're getting defunded, Well, now they're trying to do this big recruitment drive. What they're doing now, the cops who would get hired are going to be okay with the wokeness and the critical theory and what's happening. The good cops who don't like what's happening, who don't like defund the police, who don't like the critical race theory stuff, they left. The new cops that come in aren't going to care. They're going to say, give me a buck. I don't care. You don't want to live that way, because they're going to start swapping out that police department for some pro-woke lunatics. And then you're going to get a bunch of cops who believe crazy things and will do anything for a buck. If they're basically like scabs, you know what I mean? Like scab in terms of unions. You get someone, you get a picket line, you get cops saying, I ain't going to do this, I'm quitting. And then you got people saying, psh, I'll do anything for money. What do you think happens then when you go out and they're like, I don't care, I'll do anything for money. So they'll walk up to you and they'll punch you in the face, they'll do whatever. And then maybe this is what the woke people want. They want to keep using the police as the villains in this story. Rubber bullets and tear gas. Police were being shot at. Let me just say this, guys. NBC News reporting: the front door of the Brooklyn Park Police Department was struck by gunfire. And you want to stay in this city? I once left Chicago. I had an apartment. I had some income coming in. I had a job, sort of. I was running I do my own thing. I would play music in the subway or things like that. And I left it all with nothing but $200 to go to LA. Why? For adventure. Not even because I was facing any risk. I was willing to risk homelessness, and I was broke, but it was fun. And very nearly ended up homeless. Very nearly. I had been homeless in the past in Chicago. That's why I wasn't too scared. I was like, I got to make this jump. I get it, though. I was, I think, like 23 at the time. I didn't have family. I didn't have kids to worry about. And a lot of people say, it's different, man. You got kids. Let me tell you something. If you live in Minneapolis and you keep telling yourself that, you want your kids to grow up in this place, they're shooting at the police department. They're shooting out the windows of police departments. You don't want to live in that place, man. It's one of the reasons why I didn't want to live in Chicago, because you got police corruption and you got gang violence. I'm not down for that. In response to the escalating violence from gangs, the cops lose their cool. And I've had cops kick my door into my apartment with my friends. Wrong house, apparently. Come out with their guns drawn. We were like, what are you doing in our... Didn't matter. No warrant. They didn't care. Oops. And they left. Filed a complaint. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. So I don't want to live in a place like that. So I leave. I'd rather go live out in the middle of nowhere where I can defend myself and have my rights. More so than I would in some of these other places. I can't believe there are people who would justify any amount of money to live in this place. I'm sorry. I get it. Maybe it's hard. Maybe you can't just leave your family and have no money, but maybe you have to just take a leap of faith and just find something. Where there's a will, there's a way. And I think for me, I was just willing to dive in. Granted, I didn't have a family, so it was easy, but I just dove into LA. I just went there. I was like, no plan. Just boom. I was walking around downtown LA like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Hit up a bunch of friends, be like, just showed up, got no plans. And then I got lucky enough to have a friend. And so there you go, who said, come crash, but I can only let you crash for a couple nights. Then I immediately got a job, applied, met some people, and I was totally ready to sleep on the beach. I was like, I got no plans, I'll go sleep on the beach. That's what I'm going to have to do, then I'm going to have to do it. And I got lucky enough, it didn't happen that way. I had people just say, no. So look, I get it. I'm not trying to say there's a 1-for-1 exchange in that story. I'm just saying at a certain point, you have to realize this. You have to know what's going to happen when Derek Chauvin gets acquitted. And he's going to be acquitted. But let me explain this. Chauvin's been charged with 2nd-degree murder, 3rd-degree murder, and manslaughter. He's going to be acquitted. He may not go free. He may still get convicted on one of the charges. Murder 2 ain't going to happen. Murder 2 for Chauvin is that he intended to kill George Floyd. He was overcharged. The city was trying to placate the rioters, saying, see, we charged him with murder 2. But the rioters don't think long term. Murder 2 means that Chauvin got out, saw Floyd, and said that he decided to kill this man. That clearly isn't going to be proven. You can't prove that. Not in this case. He's a cop doing his job. Murder 3, very, very unlikely. Maybe. What do I know? Manslaughter, very possible. But when they come out and they say, the jury is going to go on the charge of murder in the 2nd degree, we find the defendant not guilty. On the charge of murder in the 3rd degree, we find the defendant not guilty. In the charge of manslaughter in the 2nd degree, we find the defendant guilty. But you know what clip is going to get played over and over again? We find the defendant not guilty. Then you're going to have activists saying, yo, they found him not guilty of murder. Conviction is meaningless. He might still go to prison, and then everyone loses. And you're going to sit around and wait for this? They're going to burn down and destroy everything in that city, man. And then they're going to dance in the street while it happens because they don't care. Let me make something clear for all of you guys. Maybe you can start understanding a lot of the perspective of these people. Many of these people live at the bottom. They're not rich by any means. They're poor. Many people are on benefits. There's a reason why they loot. There's a reason why poverty breeds crime. You think they're going to care when they're at the bottom and you're middle class and they destroy everything and it pulls you down? They don't care about that. They don't go anywhere. They still don't have the things they want. In fact, they come up a little bit stealing all this stuff. That's why they do it. So what do you think is going to happen? They're going to say not guilty on the count of, murder in second degree. And then that's all it's going to take. Dudes are going to be like, let's roll. They don't care about justice. They're just going to go out in the street and smash things and steal things because they want stuff. You're going to live there? You do you, man. I do me. I got out of the city because I was seeing the riots cross the bridge, getting too close to my house. And I thought, look, man, I need more space for activities. We want to grow the business. It was difficult to buy property in this area, especially with everything going on. Let's go find somewhere else. Let's go out in the middle of nowhere, be free from this stuff. It was the right choice. It wasn't about Antifa. It wasn't about Black Lives Matter. It was about lawlessness and a breakdown of social order in these cities. It was about the pandemic and everything just falling apart. And you couldn't live that way. How am I supposed to grow a business and to succeed? You couldn't do it. So we got out. That's what I did. I get it. At this point in my life, I have the ability to do that. With my business growing, we were able to move. Maybe it's not so easy for you, but I implore you to try and figure it out. That's just my opinion. Or stay, whatever. But I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.